AI is not going to be the magic answer to everything. It will not ultimately come in and wholesale replace jobs. It's going to allow folks to do their jobs more effectively and more efficiently. But I think it'll ultimately enable us to use data to identify things that right now we just don't see. AI is here to stay, and everyone should be excited about the role that it will play in our lives. Don't run away from it. Embrace it and bring it on.
Welcome to StitchStudio's Pilot to Production. In this series, we're interviewing insurance executives, investors, and consultants to hear real stories of how the industry is operationalizing AI in insurance. From carriers and brokerages to technology partners and investors, you'll gain practical insights, implementation strategies, and lessons learned from the leaders driving enterprise-scale adoption, moving from pilots to implementing responsible, predictable, and explainable AI. I'm Karan Mishra, CEO of StitchStudio, and this is Pilot to Production.
Eric, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. For those of you listening, Eric is the VP of Group Protection Products at Lincoln Financial, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Eric for a few years now. Eric, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Karan. It's good to see you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise, Eric. Thank you again. Eric, you've had a ton of experience if we jump right into it, right? With in the insurance industry, you've spent decades here working across ops and product and other areas. How do you think the technology complexity in the environments of carriers really manifests itself in the operational environment that you work with?
Well, I think the way I describe it is I'd give some context from the history that I do have in the industry. So when I started 20 plus years back, our systems were designed to have as limited interaction with people as possible. We collected premium that was self-reported, and we would pay a claim on 3 to 5, 6% of the people with as little touch as possible. And I think fast forward to what we're trying to do today is we're trying to have a much more highly engaged approach to the industry and to the experience that people have. Think of the Amazon sort of world that we live in. And so how does that manifest? The technology itself is still fairly antiquated and doesn't allow us to bring forward that vision, that future of what we're trying to get to.
That's really interesting, Eric. I like kind of how you talked about that along the continuum of a few decades, right? If you think about speaking of technology, right, the soup du jour, if you will, is AI today.
Yeah.
How do you really see AI solving for some of these technology complexities that you see and you've talked about in the past?
Well, first, what I would say is AI is not going to be the magic answer to everything. I think it's going to be an accelerant. It's going to be a strong adjunct to what we're trying to do around how we're transforming the business. And that's the way we should think about it. So what does that mean? Practically speaking, is that we are gathering information from disparate places and looking at it in a more holistic way, hopefully with insights that we'll be able to glean from that to provide a better experience. And then I also think there's a lot of functional areas that still work in a fairly archaic manual way. AI is going to absolutely be applicable there. It will not mean that it'll pay claims or things of that nature, but it will mean that it will help claims payers process, synthesize information more easily.
That's a really interesting point of view, Eric, because what I heard, and I'm going to paraphrase it, please tell me if I didn't understand it correctly, but what I'm almost hearing is AI will play in the back office from an optimization perspective, which is the pragmatic, practical way of adopting AI, versus throwing it in front of highly visible customer interactions right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
Okay, very interesting. Anything you would want to add to that, Eric? Otherwise, we'd love to kind of talk to you about a little bit about what do you think are the impediments to the adoption of AI in an organization, right? Is it technology itself, or are there other elements that would play into the adoption of AI?
No, I think there's several dimensions that are going to impact the use of AI. First is the myth of what it can do and what it can't do. It will not ultimately come in and wholesale replace jobs. It's going to allow folks to do their jobs more effectively and more efficiently. Will that have some impact? Sure. But that'll allow us to have more time and energy to focus on more important things. So I think that's number one. Number two is there definitely has to be guidelines around how it's used to make sure that you're using it accurately and that the information and the responses or the results that you're getting from it actually are legit and not, as they call them, hallucinations. So there's going to have to be a structure around that and making sure that you understand how you're using it and being able to double check, so on and so forth. At Lincoln, we actually have a apparatus in place where we've got an oversight team that basically requires all AI efforts to be reviewed and making sure that they meet certain standards, if you will, from both the quality of the data, the evaluation of the answers that you get from it, and then any legal or compliance concerns.
That's really good to know, Eric. So it's been fascinating, right? Just listening to your arc, even around AI. I think the theme I'm hearing consistently is it needs to be practical. It needs to be governed appropriately, and you need to have the right controls in place and use it in the back office, get comfortable with it before you start moving to more of the front-facing touch points that you typically have with consumers.
Yep, I think that's absolutely accurate. And I think we have to sort of walk before we run in this regard. But my nature, I'm a marketer and a strategist. So I'm always trying to think of the future where the puck is going.
Yeah.
And a conundrum that we still have is how do we engage with employees in a more meaningful way than what we do today? And I do think AI has applicability there at some point. Let's get through these first iterations and ways of using it and learning how to use it. But I think it'll ultimately enable us to use data to identify things that right now we just don't see.
That's fascinating, and that's really sage advice, if you will, Eric, in the way you phrase that. Speaking of, I think we have one question that I think everybody would like to hear. If there was one thing that you would want folks that are listening to this conversation to take away from what we've talked about, what would that be?
AI is here to stay, and everyone should be excited about the role that it will play in our lives. And I definitely think we've got to walk before we run in terms of how we think about it and apply it. But don't run away from it. Embrace it and bring it on.
That's wonderful to hear. Eric, thank you so much for your time. This has been a pleasure. That's really good advice, and I'm sure the audience will enjoy listening to this.
Thank you, Karan. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thanks for watching. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube or by following us on LinkedIn. And please consider giving us a rating or a review so it helps others to find our show. Visit StitchStudio.ai to learn more about our applied AI solution built for insurance. See you soon.